Yeah, so temperature affects the electron microscopy images significantly. The temperature can influence the atomic vibrations. Temperature can influence phase transitions. It can induce phase transitions. For example, sample can melt, and so electron beam, when it bombards your specimen, so local temperature can go up actually in even though you try to maintain the sample temperature, but uh, many times what happens, the sample temperature goes up. So suppose you are thinking that you are keeping it at 300 Kelvin, so actual temperature may go up quite high. So that's the reason that you should not, uh, you should be careful how much electron, uh, the dose of electron beam energy which you are supplying should be limited, the exposure time. Otherwise, you can see a lot of sample damage actually. Does it answer your question? So electron
Yes, sir.
beam heat your sample and can damage it. Yeah, it can deform the sample.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Get it. And so, what is standard temperature we use, like Indian standard or some other standard?
Sorry?
Like we are in India, so we are using Indian standards, or like in some cases it requires some other standard norms.
For what?
So for temperature, sir.
See, temperature, there is no Indian or American standard. There is one international standards by ISO, International Standards Organization, right?
Yes, sir.
So that decides the standards for units. Okay, I think you attended NCL 101 class, right? Did
Yes,
you
sir.
attend
Yes, sir.
my lecture?
Yes, sir.
There I explained 7
Yeah,
basic.
you explained
Yeah,
us.
yeah,
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
yeah. Any other question?
Sir, Hemant.
Yes, Hemant.
Sir, actually, you told in the lecture that eels can predict conduction band and in a balance band, means a band gap, and UV visual spectroscopy also can predict. So which one are most accurate and most cheaper?
See, there are many differences in both the measurements. UV visible spectroscopy is a bulk measurement. Okay? So it gives you information about uh, a significant amount of sample in comparison to, that's number one. So it's a bulk measurement. You take a lot of samples in the cuvette, and so whatever you get is the averaged out information from uh, a significant number of particles which are suspended, or suppose you're taking it on solid sample, so you have to take significant amount of powder, right? So it does not truly represent diversity of the band gap. Band gap for each particle may not be same. In fact, within a crystalline object, if it is anisotropic, so band gap is a very complex uh, uh, phenomena, right? Band gap is not the same. I explained in another lecture series on spectroscopic leptometry. So first you have to understand what is band gap, and UV visible spectrometer gives you optical gap. It does not truly give you electronic band gap. Okay. So now let us come to the EELS. EELS process happens when high energy electron interact with your specimen, and it loses some energy, and then the loss in the energy can be because of several processes. One of the processes, the electron migration from valence band to conduction band. It is one of the many processes that can happen when electron beam goes through your specimen. So if you look at the outgoing electron carefully, and you calculate its energy, so you can get a lot of information about what processes and what are the different processes under through which various electrodes have lost because you get spectra, and there are a lot of like plasmonic losses, and so finally it is still it predicts you optical gap. Both techniques gives you like optical gap. The difference is that unlike UV visible, here you can get single particle optical gap. Okay, you don't need to get information from uh, a big chunk of specimen, but you can get particle by particle information. You get my point?
Yes, sir.
But eventually process is the same because electron migration is happening from valence band to conduction band. So it is still the optical gap. But it was a good question actually. I like that question because nobody has asked me this question ever before. So this was a good question. And previous question was also quite good. So anybody else? And I'm not sure whether you have checked the emails. Monday, I'll be conducting one exam, and that exam will be for 10 marks, and that will adds up into the marks of your final exam. And that will be based on the question and answer. So I'll include everybody in the Zoom group, and then most of the students will be in the waiting room. Then I will take one student at a time and ask two students, one student two questions, and I'll give only 4 minutes. Like I think it's pretty much enough, like 2 minutes, like 120 seconds for each question. So 4 minutes per student, strictly only two questions and 5 marks each. So be ready for that. I have uploaded the PDF files of the previous lectures and this lecture as well in the Dropbox folder, and you have access to the all the. Thankfully, this recording is available. Otherwise, earlier we did not have access for earlier batches. So anyway, so any other question? Otherwise, I can go back to my.
Sir, is question is there, sir, regarding the scattering factor.
Yes.
Two points were like dependency on the theta and voltage. Can you explain that?
Yeah, I'm that is coming forward actually. Okay? I'm going to cover it in detail. And this topic, Anwar, will be covered in many lectures. Okay, so I'll be coming back to this question in many ways actually. Okay, so today I'll touch upon this question, this, and then I'll come back using Rutherford formula. Okay, Rutherford formula also this picture comes when we'll be having. I promise you that we'll
Okay.
add up this electron interaction and electron neutron in nucleus interaction. There we'll discuss all these things. So yeah.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. Is Pooja there? So Harsh, his grandfather expired, so he messaged me that he'll not be. Harsh Soni, BSc student, BSc Part 3 student from Chhattisgarh, I think. So his grandmother has expired. So yeah. So I told you that this interaction cross section is extremely important concept, and not only for electron microscopy, but for all kinds of techniques, even UV visible spectroscopy, Raman spectroscopy. In fact, I was explaining to one of my scientist friends about Raman spectroscopy, that how weak is the scattering cross section for Raman for protein samples. Okay, so and how to enhance it, surface enhanced Raman effects. Some of you might be knowing. I'll be teaching that technique to you guys. So there actually we try to increase the interaction cross section of Raman process, because Rayleigh process dominates actually. If you have photoluminescence processes, so photoluminescence scattering cross section is relatively much higher than Raman process, and it masks the signal actually. Raman cross section is way too weak. So interaction cross section is defined as a probability for that event to happen. For example, you bombard the sample 1 million times. So out of 1 million times, how many times that scattering will happen? So it has nothing to do with the physical dimensions of the particle. So it may be more than the physical dimensions, or it can be less than physical dimension. I can teach you example where the interaction cross section, for example, this surface plasmon resonance is the example where scattering cross section is larger than the physical dimension. For example, if physical dimension is 20 nanometer, you can the scattering cross section will be much larger than that because of the extended electric field which is coming out of the particle. For example, you take 20 nanometer particle. So this electric field actually extends out actually, okay, like halo. So you scattering cross section is much higher. So electric vector will extend, will interact well beyond the physical dimensions of the particle when the frequency is equal to basically resonance frequency. I have this slide in another series, but I'm just telling you about. So this thing you already we have discussed about it. So it is easiest way to understand that how do you understand the elastic versus inelastic scattering cross section. So for example, you take 1 square foot area, the window, and then you bombard a ball, tennis ball 10 times, and out of 10, if 9 times glass does not break, and then 1 time it breaks, so then you can conclude that the scattering cross section for elastic events is 0.9 square feet, and for inelastic event it is 0.1 square feet. So it is most easiest way to explain. So why do we get that's fundamental question. This answer is given many times, but I'm repeating it, that electrons get scattered from atoms due to the Coulombian interactions, which purely depend upon the potential distribution function. So this term will be very important because that decides actually atomic form factor. So that means you do not see atoms because there is nothing as such as atoms. So what you see, actually electrons do not see atoms. Okay, they see the potential distribution of Coulombic potential distribution around in the lattice actually. Okay, that's what they feel. We call it as an atom. Okay? So for example, these different orbitals, the electrons are moving in different directions. So that's how we look at the electron cloud. So incident electron interacts with the electron cloud. So you can see that electron cloud is so complex, and there you can have even more complexity when you have hybridization and all kinds of stuff. So this orbital picture may get really complex. So we are talking about very complex stuff. So don't think about atom as a solid ball here, otherwise you will never learn this. So think about think from the orbital picture, and okay, then it will be easier for you to understand. So to understand the electron scattering, I explained last time that first you make your mental picture about interaction of electron scattering from a single atom. Okay, if you understand that, then you can understand the scattering from collection of angles. Same process you can, I explained last time that you understand X-ray diffraction. So when you try to understand X-ray diffraction, first you have to understand how X-ray photon interacts with a single atom. If you understand this process, that how X-ray photon interacts with single atom, then you can easily understand. So that is basically that decides. I told you that atomic form factor, right? Atomic form factor comes out of this, and scattering from collection of atom, you can this information comes from structure. So we call it structure factor. So if you multiply both, then you get diffraction. Diffraction in terms of diffraction, your pattern, okay, electron diffraction pattern, right? You get this electron diffraction pattern, or extra diffraction pattern, which you get these kind of peaks. Both are the same actually, right? More or less same, but there are a lot of differences. But essentially, you are getting diffraction information from both of them. In that way, both are same. That both gives you, but there is a fundamental difference in both the techniques. I keep on informing you about the differences. So scattering from single atom depends upon incident electron energy, and which answer was asking, okay, kV, okay. Suppose it is 100 kilo electron volt or 200 or whatever it is. Atomic number of scattering atom, I explained, okay, and the angle. Third thing is angle, right? Angle is always there, scattering angle. Okay. These are the three things on which scattering depends. So, okay. So scattering from collection of, I'll be explaining deeper these things, all these concepts. So don't worry about that. There will be plenty of repetition. So scattering from entire specimen rather than a single atom depends upon its thickness. All of you are aware of that, and density. Okay, how densely the atoms are packed, crystallinity, and angle of diffraction, right? Angle of scattering, right? Okay. So let us take one by one. So how do we define scattering from an isolated atom? So here we will be discussing a very simplistic equation, and we will understand the concepts, and then we will reach to some simple conclusions, and then we will discard these equations. Okay. First we understand. So these are actually only for basic understanding. And in the next series, I will take you to the Rutherford scattering multiplied by X-rays. Those electron, more complex, much more closer to the reality. Okay. So, but this whatever I'm teaching today is very basic, and it will help you to make your mental picture. So it's highly useful. So we can define the scattering cross-section in terms of effective radius of a single isolated atom. Effective radius, please note that it is effective radius. It's not, it's basically scattering cross-section. It's not the geometrical radius actually. Okay? So sigma atom is pi r square, and R will have different values for, so R will be different for elastic, and R will be different for inelastic process. And also R will be different for electron interaction, and R will be different for electron nucleus part. Okay.
Sir.
Yes.
So what is effective radius?
Effective radius is the probability. I told you now that effective radius is actually the size of atom which is seen by incoming electron. Okay. For example, this incident electron is being bombarded on, let me explain to you. Yeah, look at this here. So this is a picture of an atom. Okay, this entire, you can see this is an atom. Okay, large atom, and this is the nucleus, and you have this electron cloud. Electrons are orbiting. So incident electron, when it interacts with electron, so it will not see atom as a large size, 1 angstrom diameter object. Okay, it will see this as a probably let's say 1 picometer. Okay, that is 10 to the power minus 2 angstrom. Got it? So that will be the effective radius of the atom. You got my point?
Sir,
for electron interaction, because that is the effective radius of the particle. So that will be the size of interaction, which, so for example, that is the size of incident electron will see this atom. Okay, You understand what I mean? So when you talk about electron nucleus interaction, then it will be much smaller because nucleus size is much smaller. So that may be somewhere around, let's say, 10 to the power minus 3 or minus 4 angstrom, close to like femtometer. Okay, like 10 femtometer or something like that. Yes, Bolo.
So it means the effective radius is coming from the charges, not from it's
Exactly. You got it. Who is talking?
Hemant.
हेमंत you पकड़ में आ गया तुम्हारे कौन से आज पकड़ में आ गया exactly तुमने अच्छी तरह पकड़ा है.
Yes.
You got it right. So it is charge interaction. Exactly. So it does not know the atom. I mean, incoming electron does not recognize atom, that atom aa gaya. It does not. It just looks at the electron charge interaction. Yes, wherever the charge is, electron will talk to charge.
Okay, sir.
Okay? Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
And the size basically depends upon that size of that charge through which it is interacting, be it nucleus or be it electron. Okay? That's how dispersed that charge is. Yeah.
Sir,
Yes, madam.
sir, I have
Yes,
a
sir.
doubt. Sir, in the next slides about the
Previous one or next one?
next one, sir.
Yes.
Sir, next, sir. Sir, here you have written the larger the cross section, the better chance of scattering. Sir. If the material which is having the larger cross section is of lower Z, then will it be having better chance of?
No. Higher Z element will have larger scattering cross section. Higher Z element, because their electron density is much higher.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, there are more charges in the. Okay, so if you talk about electron interaction, then higher Z will be the scattering cross section will be higher. Okay, we'll come to that. I'll show you a graph. Okay, I'll show you actually graph.
Another question is that
Yes.
This scattering factor varies with the crystal structure also. So means like the FCC.
Oh yes. You are actually picking up my mind. Answer. You are actually you are going into the direction, answer, where this lecture is actually going in the same direction lecture is taking you. If you look at my all your 3-4 questions are answered in the same series, same sequence. The sequence of your questions is the same as the sequence of my slides, answer. So I'll be answering in the same sequence. Okay, are you happy?
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
So larger cross section means larger nuclei.
Yes, not larger nucleus. Basically, it does not. I mean, again, you are confusing yourself. See, it does not look at you when you say larger size of nucleus. It does not look at the physical dimension, geometrical dimension. It looks at the amount of charge,
Number of photons particle.
number of protons.
Yes, sir.
Number of protons inside the nucleus.
Okay.
Because it sees the charge. It's basically Coulombian interaction only purely. Okay. It's a basically Coulombian force, Coulombian interaction, charge interaction. So it does not, incoming electron does not see nucleus as a nucleus. It looks at it a charged object. Got my point?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. So now we will be dividing this problem into two parts, very simple two parts: electron interaction and electron nucleus interaction. Very simple. Otherwise, you cannot solve this problem. So then this problem becomes very simple. So now, if we look at the I explained already this thing that this concept is highly important, and then we'll be coming back to this concept. This concept is useful for X-ray diffraction, electron diffraction, neutron diffraction, wherever it is. So atomic scattering factor is basically differential scattering cross section. Okay, like this. Okay, and if you take summation of different number of n, like n number of atoms. So suppose you have a lattice. Okay, a large lattice. So you have information about one atom. So if you that is called atomic form factor, and you know where these atoms are placed through this HKL information X, Y, Z. So then if you multiply this with this, and then so you have information about intensity of HKLP. That's it. Okay. So this is electronic properties of single atom, and this is structure property position, right? So then when you combine both of them, then you get this diffraction pattern. Okay.
Sir,
Yes.
are these HKL like these are the planes of the particular crystal structure, sir?
Yeah, these are the Miller indices.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. So now this is out of syllabus, but everything is actually out of syllabus, which I because this slide will help you a lot in different interviews at different places. So when you talk about, because these techniques nowadays everybody is using, chemists are using nuclear, they go to Bark and they do the neutron scattering and neutron diffraction also. So this slide will help you. So here, this term will change. So this term remain the same. So this term is basically the property of your material, crystalline property. It's basically, this is, suppose you take a cobalt oxide crystal or zinc oxide crystal. So this property is actually your material specific property. And this parameter is specific to the element. For example, this will be different from platinum, gold. It has nothing to do with the structure. So this is basically property of your lattice. It is the property of your crystalline material, and this information is actually this depends upon theta, okay, and energy, which is basically which you can plug in lambda, the wavelength. So this is different for different interactions. So for example, X-ray form factor is the Fourier transform of a spatial distribution of electron charge density, okay, electron cloud around nucleus, okay, usually taken as spherical for X-ray crystallography. It is not spherical, so it is, but for simplicity it is. So X-ray crystallography does not see the atom. It does not see the ball stick model. How many people know X-ray crystallography? Or some? Can you raise your hand? How many people? Okay. Anyway, so can you raise your hands? In Zoom, you can do that. Yes. Anybody else? Pooja, yes. Anybody else? Anyway, there are only 2 hands. Yeah, raised up. So probably you are not aware of. So X-rays do not see material as made of atoms. Please note that even X-rays don't see your material as made of atoms. It sees it as a made of electron cloud, electron charge density, more the electron. So it does not even see nucleus. Forget about okay. So electron form factor is a spatial Fourier transform of, we'll look at this again, spatial potential distribution. Okay, so it looks at the potential distribution. Okay, and nuclear form factor is a bit complex. Nuclear form factor is a bit complex. There are 2 form factors. One is the chemical form factor, which, okay, and another is magnetic form factor. Okay, another is basically, okay. So this is actually spatial density distribution of the nucleus, and another one actually the magnetic form factor. Okay, right. So if you are interested, I can explain to you this thing. Yeah. So this magnetic form factor depends upon Z because it depends upon electron cloud interaction, but chemical form factor is a delta function. It's very sharp. It's very sharp, and it does not depend upon the Z. And that's why neutron diffraction is very important. It's very powerful technique because for neighboring atoms, for example, you have cobalt doping in nickel oxide or nickel sulfide, and you want to look at suppose you want to look at neighboring elements in the periodic table. So then nuclear form factor you can use, because X-rays and X-ray diffraction and electron diffraction will not be that sensitive, okay, because they are sensitive to large change in the Z. Got it? So I explained.
Excuse me, sir.
Can you please elaborate chemical form factor?
Can you
again?
repeat your question, Manisha?
What, can you please elaborate chemical form factor?
Oh, you are
What is like
interested.
infinitesimal delta function with respect to what does this line imply here?
See, it is actually it comes from the, see, there are I have 2-3 slides actually in the coming lecture.
Okay.
I don't have actually slide. Let me see if I'm not carrying actually because it's out of syllabus, so I'm not carrying slides for that. But I can explain you that. Yeah, I can explain to you.
Hello, sir. I have a question.
Yes.
Sir, you are saying that this formula is atomic form factor.
Yes.
Then in case of all these different form factors like X-ray, electron, and nuclear chemical form factor, will the formula will be same or there is something else?
No. I will be teaching this in the next presentation from next week onwards. Okay?
Because, sir, in
Yes,
case of
yes,
XRD, when we were studying for that,
Good
we
question.
have studied the same formula for
So
studying
let me answer
XRD.
this question. Let me answer this question. X-ray
Okay.
form factor is X-ray form factor considered only scattering of X-ray photons with electron cloud, right? Got my point?
Yes, sir.
X-ray photons interaction with electron cloud.
Electron cloud.
Okay, it does not consider nucleus. Okay,
Yes.
how dense, how much is the electron charge density, right?
Yeah.
And electron form factor is electron interaction with electron cloud and electron plus that is Z times, because you have Z electrons, and electron interaction with nucleus. Okay, that is this plus this. There are two terms in this. Here there is only one term. Here there are two terms. समझ में आ गया?
Oh, okay, sir. Means there will be something additional in this formula.
Yes. So it is more complicated. Electron form factor. Okay.
Okay.
And Manisha's question: what is this chemical form factor and magnetic form factor? See, when you look at the neutron interaction with the matter, so neutron interact with, let me explain it. So if you look at the, suppose this is your nucleus and you have orbiting electron. So electron has got its spin, for example, okay, and here also you have spin. So you in a neutron interaction, you have two terms. One is chemical form factor, and another is magnetic form factor. So chemical form factor comes from interaction of neutron with the nucleus. Okay, and so the form factor for so that's why it is a delta function, because size is so small. Okay, you got my point, because neutrons, the nucleus size is so small, and this form factor is random. Let me, I used to actually, I showed one slide in the first lecture, if you remember. You remember why we cannot take neutron? You understand why we use electrons to make microscopes?
Yes,
You remember that?
Yes, you explain it by Z also.
Yeah, so you can look at that lecture. There actually I have shown the form factor. There also I have shown. Actually, there I have shown you the size of the atom. Like how the incoming electron and incoming X-ray photon and
Yeah,
incoming
yeah.
neutron.
I will look at it, and if I will have doubt, I will ask you again.
Yeah, so no problem. So I will be repeating this, but right now I don't have slide there. I
Okay,
showed
no problem,
this.
sir.
So I can tell you, for example, let me have periodic table in front of me. So for example, cobalt, palladium, so this is basically increasing order of uh, charge density. Okay, so the charge density is increasing in this dimension. So now, so incoming electron and incoming X-ray photon, see the scattering cross section will increase in this direction. Okay, when Z is increasing. But
Yes.
for neutron, the chemical form factor, for example, titanium is this, cobalt can be this, platinum can be this, gold can be this. It's random, and it is infinite. Okay, infinite. Okay, I could not pronounce it. Okay, got it. Okay,
Yes.
so that is it's random because it's based on the nuclear interaction, right? Nuclear physics.
Nu-
Okay, it comes from nuclear physics, and there is no formula for that. It is random. For example, for gadolinium, I think for dysprosium, this form factor, scattering form factor for neutron is 0. I mean, it does not scatter. It's transparent. So it will not interact at all. So it can be 0 also. It can be okay. So
About magnetic form factor, it depends only on Z.
Magnetic form factor is different because magnetic form factor where it depends upon Z, because here you have spin of neutron and spin of electron, they're interacting, right?
Yeah.
Got my point? So that's why it will look at how many electrons are there, right? That's basically magnetic interaction, right? So it will be proportional to number of electron orbiting. Got my point?
Okay. I was asking whether are there any other factors on which magnetic form factor depends.
No, that is a spin interaction, because neutron spin will interact with this.
Okay.
Sir,
Yes, Priyanshi.
sir, why neutron not diffracted for dysprosium, sir?
No, neutron. Sorry, your question. Can you repeat your question?
Sir, आपने बोला कि for dysprosium, neutron form factor get not
Yeah,
diffracted.
answer. Actually, nobody knows. Not just me.
Sir,
Because it is about this property comes from its nucleus, and it is difficult to know the physics of nucleus actually inside the nucleus.
Sir, it means if we are going to formulate the chemical form factor, it will be a novel research.
Yeah, because we were trying to probe dysprosium. Dysprosium. You can Google actually neutron. Dysprosium. I think dysprosium. I'm not sure dysprosium or gadolinium. I'm sure dysprosium. I think there was a student Preeti Gupta. Okay, she made dysprosium chromium oxide multiferroic, and she had this problem actually. Anyway, I mean, one of the you can Google. I'm one of these rare earth element has very little or close to 0 form factor, so it does not scatter. It's very random actually. Okay.
yes sir, actually gadolinium has सब exceptions, तो मुझे लगा हो सकता है.
Gadolinium का क्या?
सर एक्चुअली गैडोलियम F ब्लॉक एलिमेंट्स में गैडोलियम के कुछ एक्सेप्शंस है सर, तो मुझे लगा हो सकता है गैडोलियम ही हो.
No, not gadolinium. I think it is dysprosium. You can Google the or I will tell you, because I don't carry slides on this because it's not the it's of the syllabus. So okay, but I don't remember it exactly, but I will tell you maybe in the next lecture. Yeah.
Yes sir.
Any other question?
So for the chemical form factor, how will the neutron interacted with the atom?
Neutron interacts with the nucleus. look at the spatial distribution of the nucleus. So that's a nucleus interaction, neutron interaction with the nucleus.
Sir, how? Because they are chargeless.
Okay, the interaction of nucleus, neutron with the nucleus, right? It's basically nuclear interaction. It comes into the nuclear physics. It's a domain of nuclear physics actually. The interaction of neutron with the nucleus, that is completely out of syllabus. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. If
Sir,
you are
gamma rays.
interested in- Yes.
Sir, gamma rays to interact with the nucleus and also neutron radiation. So, what is the difference between those radiation those interactions, sir?
See, gamma rays interact with everything. Okay, gamma rays are highly interactive. Okay, so gamma rays can knock out your electrons also. Okay, like X-rays. So whatever X-rays can do, because gamma rays are higher energy than X-rays. So gamma rays can do everything. They can knock out. They can knock out entire atom also. Okay, they can knock out electron. They can have electronic transitions, and they can interact with the nucleus. So there is not, gamma rays do not interact just with the nucleus. They interact with electron cloud as well. Okay, just like X-rays. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Any other question? I love questions actually. Thank God you are asking good questions today. Very nice. आज लग रहा है कुछ क्लास चल रही है, पर 2-3 लोग ही, I mean only 2-3 people are asking questions. I think only Ankit Maharshi completely silent. I don't know. Ankit Maharshi, are you a registered student? Ankit Maharshi, can you unmute yourself?
Sir, neutron beam also interacts with a proton, sir.
Yes. So earlier that topic can be closed. Now we are back to electron. Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Because we are distracting. Okay. So now you can see that these solid lines are actually your lattice planes. Okay, these solid lines are your lattice planes. Okay, I'm not very good. Okay, so now let me erase this. So these solid lines are your atomic plane. This one and this one and this one. And these are actually incoming electron direction. They are coming at some angle theta, which basically satisfy your Bragg's equation. And because lambda is very small, so we calculate for example, your d values are 2.5 angstrom. Okay, interatomic spacing, interlayer spacing. So your theta is going to be very small for electrons. Okay, so this is going to be a diffraction angle. Please take a note. For X-rays, diffraction angle is in tenths of degrees, right? It can be 20 something, 30 something, or you understand what I mean?
Yes, sir. Yes.
It will be 10 times, mostly 10, approximately 10 times of this, because here lambda is much smaller. So diffraction angle, so these electrons are almost parallel because this angle is so small. So for the diffraction, so this is very important that for diffraction to happen, suppose these are atomic planes. So for the diffraction to happen, let me change the color of my pen. So these are atomic planes. So for diffraction to happen, electrons must travel almost parallel because this angle is so small. They are almost parallel. And so suppose this electron will diffract at like this. So these are actually your direct beam. If you extend this, so I'm sorry, not very good. So if you extend, if electron keep on traveling like this, so these are your direct beam. Yeah, समझ में आ रहा है? Do you understand?
Yes, sir. हाँ, sir, ये parallel beam का example है क्या फिर?
हाँ, this is parallel beam.
Okay, sir.
And these beams are diffracted beam. अब समझ में आ गया? So this angle is 2 theta, theta plus theta. This angle is 2 theta, theta plus theta. Same
Sir,
as
here
X-rays.
Here, sir, you have mentioned theta is equal to 0.288 degree,
Yes.
which is you said a diffraction. Then why we have you have not wrote 2 theta is equal to 0.288, or already it has been divided by the 2.
It is the diffraction angle theta. Okay,
But sir,
theta is the
diffraction angle
diffraction
to
angle.
diffraction
theta?
angle to sir 2 theta होता है.
हाँ अरे यार तुम 2 theta, you know why it is 2 theta?
Yes,
You
sir.
know what is the reason why it is 2 theta? Because this is basically the angle from your incident beam.
Yes, sir.
Okay, because this is your goniometer is like this. Okay, this is your incident beam X-ray, and then this is your detector. So this geometry, because of the geometry, you consider it 2 theta. But diffraction angle is theta only. It's not, you write it out of convenience, you write 2 theta. But in this equation, in Bragg's law, you write theta. You don't write 2 theta.
No, sir, not Bragg's law, sir. Sorry, here just below of the Bragg's law, theta is equal to 0.288 degree.
Yeah, that is a diffraction angle. Okay, theta is the diffraction angle. 2 theta is 2 theta, 2 times of the diffraction angle. Is it clear to you, Mayur?
Yes, sir.
You plot it like this. Okay, you plot 2 theta because of the geometry of the instrument, of the goniometer. You understand? That's how
Yes,
the
sir.
theta
Yes,
is measured. That does not mean that your diffraction angle is not 2 theta. Who told you the diffraction angle is 2 theta?
Sir, from graduation days, sir, we
No,
know
no, no,
that
no, no,
diffraction
no,
angle
no,
is 2
no.
theta.
Diffraction angle is theta. It is measured as 2 theta. It is plotted as theta. That does not mean that angle is 2 theta. Angle is theta only. Okay, you understand?
Okay. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Pooja, back to you. Do you understand this?
Yes, sir.
So now, Pooja, if you another thing. So if you take these straight electron direct beam and form and focus them at one point, so this will be your point, central point. Got my point? If you focus them.
Okay, sir. Okay.
And if you
So,
focus them, these point diffracted angle as theta, this will be your point, one of these points. Anyway, okay. Got my
okay.
point?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And now you ask about HRTM. What is HRTM? So HRTM will be, so for example, you have this, HRTM will be, I will draw it for you. HRTM will be, for example, this is your direct beam. This is your direct beam, which is not diffracted, undifracted, or 0, diffracted. And let me change the color. And suppose this is your diffracted beam at theta, diffraction angle theta. And if you set the aperture in such a way that you allow, so there is a phase difference between both these waves, right? These waves are coherent waves, and so they have a phase angle. If you allow them to interfere with each other, so then you will get these interference patterns like bright, dark, bright, dark, bright, dark. So that's what you see in the HRTM. HRTM, that's, I don't have picture right now of HRTM. Let me see. But I will be teaching you entire.
Sir.
Yes.
Then are the fringes of result of this phase interference pattern?
Yes. Fringes are actually the result of interference. Like you get the fringes in like rainbow. Wherever you get fringes, right? Like in optics, actually you get fringes. Wherever you get fringes, it's the same actually. Electron microscopy also, it is the same. Let me see.
Okay,
no, this is not the. So this is some other example, Moir pattern. Let me see if I can pull out. Yes. So these are your fringes. You can see the fringes actually. So this is the result of so the high resolution. That's why high resolution electron microscopy is also called phase contrast microscopy. It is called
Yes, sir. Yes.
phase contrast, right? Because the contrast here, bright dark is changing as per the phase difference between these two beams. So this one of them, like this is direct, this one dark gray, and light gray is the diffracted beam, and you allow both of them to merge. You can see these apertures are allowing both of them are merging here. So this in bright field you are stopping the diffracted beam. You can see you have stopped. They are not allowed. So here both of them are allowed. Here this is blocked. Diffracted beam at theta, Bragg diffracted beam. They are blocked. Only this is allowed. So if you block this and allow diffracted beam, then you get dark field. Got my point?
Yes, sir. यस सर, एक्चुअली मुझे वाइवा में पूछा मैम ने HRTM और TAM के बीच में क्या डिफरेंस है, तो मैंने बोला मैम फेज कॉन्ट्रास्ट है इसलिए रेजोल्यूशन ज्यादा है। तो मैम ने पूछा क्यों फेज कॉन्ट्रास्ट है, एंड आई वाज लाइक ब्लैंक।
नो, फेज कॉन्ट्रास्ट इसीलिए क्योंकि इसमें वेव नंबर 1 में और वेव नंबर 2 में देयर इज अ फेज डिफरेंस। सो फेज डिफरेंस कैन बी इन फेज or out of phase. Got my point?
Yes, sir.
And in phase, that means bright spot, and out of phase means dark spot.
Dark
spot.
spot.
See here, you see bright, dark, bright, dark, bright, dark. You see the points like bright, dark. So now next question, which I will teach you later on, that whether atoms are bright or dark. That question I'll keep it in the last. That will be my last lecture in this series actually. But this preliminary information, this is the actually preliminary information about HRTM. Is it clear to you? Basic things?
Yes, sir. Clear. Thank you, sir.
कौन सी मैडम ने पढ़ाया था?
आठवले मैम।
आठवले मैडम।
अंजलि आठवले।
Yeah, I know her. We know each other very well. So very nice.
So.
Yes.
Sir, Deepali here.
Yes,
as we
आपकी आवाज सुन के अच्छा लगा. Thank you for speaking.
Sir, as we got fringes in TEM also, so we can call that also a phase contrast microscopy.
It is called HRTM is called as phase contrast microscopy, madam.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So now Ansar, this is Ansar's question. Ansar, back to your question. You asked that whether the scattering cross section depends upon theta. So here you can see that this is an example of atomic scattering factor. Actually, this is sine theta. This actually you may not see sine theta divided by lambda. So, and this is F. This is a form factor, and this is for bromide ion. This is for iron ion, calcium ion, chloride ion, oxygen, carbon, and hydrogen. You can see hydrogen form factor is very small. That means because it has very less electron, I mean 1 electron only, so it does not scatter much. So it's a scattering atomic form factor is very small for hydrogen, and it just decays as a function of when sine theta divided by lambda increases. So that means theta is increasing. So for theta very small, so sine theta is almost equivalent to theta. So that means when the scattering for example, electron is coming like this. So when you are increasing the scattering angle, this is theta. When you are increasing the scattering angle like this, so the probability that electron will get scattered is becoming less and less. It is dropping. So probability of electron getting scattered and higher an angle, it goes down actually. Okay, most of the electrons elastically scattered electrons are forward scattered. So 0 is basically forward scattered. When theta is 0, that means forward scattered. So you can see forward scattering is much larger. Are you getting this point?
Sir, no, sir.
Okay, let me
higher the theta. I didn't get that.
So for example, this is your material, and these are your atomic planes, and let's see, and this is your incident beam. This is incident beam, and now I'm sorry. Now these are diffracted beam. This is theta. And so this is diffracted beam, and this is angle theta with respect to the direct beam. This is direct beam. Okay. So for example, if you are bombarding 1,000 electrons, so out of 1,000 electrons, most of the electrons will end up here, forward scattering at theta is equal to 0. This is theta is equal to 0, right?
Yes, sir.
Here.
And sir, you
So
said
that is what
1,000
is displayed here. So this point is maximum here. Atomic probability of atomic scattering is maximum. So that means most of the electron will be scattered here. So that's why you saw that in diffraction pattern, this central spot is brightest. You understand?
Yes, sir.
Central electron diffraction, there is a central brightest point, and then you have weaker points. Okay, faint points. So
sir, it
so
will
when you
be
go,
one by one bombarded.
So let me explain to you. When you increase the angle, so the probability that you will get the electron will become weaker and weaker. I will explain you through the like this. You can see that this is Monte Carlo simulation. So this is incident beam. So you can see most of the electrons are coming forward. You know, you can see that here the density is very high. When you increase the angle, the probability is very less. You understand my point?
Sir, yes, sir.
And same thing you can understand through diffraction pattern. Diffraction pattern was there in another slide. I think you saw that, right? Just now I was showing it. Let me show you again.
Sir?
Yes.
Jyoti here.
Jyoti, yes.
Sir, you have said like most of the electrons, they get forward scattering. So what is the cause? Like in previous picture, we have seen like they're like almost, if you accumulate all of them, we have a lot of like diffraction beams also. So what is the cause of like this much diffraction? Like how can
listen? I did not listen to you. I will talk to you again. Just to complete the picture of Ansar's question, you can see this is the central spot, and you can see the intensity. So when you increase the angle, you are going outwards. Okay, you can see the intensity is decreasing when you are going outwards.
Yes, sir.
Okay, this central spot is brightest, so you have maximum electrons coming here, this area, and then the intensity goes down. Okay, and yeah. Yes. Question number. Next question. Some other student was asking. Can you unmute yourself? Another student who was asking. Jyoti. Yes, Jyoti, madam. Bolo, please go. Yes.
In that previous picture, we have seen like the forward scattering. In like we are getting incident beam direct to the forward scattering. We are getting like most of electrons to the forward scattering. But there are many electrons which are giving us diffractions also, na?
Yes.
My question is like, is there something we can decrease this diffraction beams, or like what is the cause of getting this much diffraction? Like if we are having a sample and we get more diffraction than the forward scattering, so is there something we can do about it?
See if okay, good question, very good question. So diffraction, now you can see that. So diffraction, so you want to minimize the intensity of this diffraction spot, right? So diffraction is happening when Bragg conditions are satisfied. So if you satisfy the Bragg condition, you know the Bragg's law. So so the moment you satisfy the Bragg condition, lambda is equal to 2d sine theta. So your electron, suppose these are your lattice planes. These are your lattice planes, and these are this is your electron beam which is falling onto the lattice planes. So if you tilt the, you are right, actually you can tilt this sample in such a way that it does not satisfy this equation. Then you will have most of the electron will be forward scattered. You understand my point?
But then will it follow the constructive interference?
Oh, constructive interference is where when you are allowing direct beam and so then yes, you will not get HRTM image. You are right. You will not. You are right. Very good question. Very brilliant question. Very nice question. I think it's a question of the day. Very nice. That question is, let me go to the previous, because this question is for HRTM. So let me go back. Very nice question. No, not this. Yeah. See, HRTM you will get only when let me pull up the right. Let me pull up the slide. Question is very good actually. आज सब लोग चार्ट्स लग रहे हैं, बहुत बढ़िया, very good. This is the way my physical class used to be. But this question I really love. So I would like to spend time. Yes. I have the slide. Yeah. Now, so so Jyoti's question, which is very bright, can be answered here. So what she's telling that, what if most of the electrons, so this is, let us understand. So this is direct beam, or you can call it undiffracted, though we do not call in electron microscopy as and we call it zero zero diffracted beam actually. Okay, zero zero diffracted beam. But in layman language, you can call it direct beam or diffracted beam. Okay, so this is the direct beam. And now you can see this is basically a diffracted beam, which satisfy your Bragg's law. Jyoti, is it clear now? This point is clear?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah.
Now, what Jyoti is telling that if you align your lattice in such a way, for example, what Jyoti is telling, so what Jyoti is telling that you align it in such a way that this theta, this condition is not fulfilled. That means so electron beams are coming at certain angle, which is not equivalent to theta, right? Theta d, diffraction angle, right? Here, so this is, so theta has to be exactly 0.288, Jyoti, right? If theta is not equal to 0.288, will you get the HRTM images, right? That's the question, right?
Yes, yes.
You will not get. Very good, Jyoti. You will not get. You will not get. If theta is not equivalent to this, that is the question. That is the answer which I am giving you now. But this answer will slightly change. Slightly change because of this difference. So this answer is valid for X-ray diffraction as well as for electron diffraction. But electrons behave in a slightly different way, which I will be teaching you in advanced classes. So electrons see this reciprocal lattice vector not as a dot, we are all taught in crystallography that reciprocal lattice vector is dot, but it becomes a rod actually, rod shape, elongated. So Bragg conditions are relaxed here. You can see that Bragg conditions are relaxed. I will teach you later on. So Bragg conditions are relaxed, so you will still get diffraction spot even though it is not strictly fulfilled, this condition. So what I am trying to tell you that even if theta is not, theta is very little bit in the vicinity of this. For example, theta is slightly off, like slightly off. For example, 0.26. So still you will get different electrons will diffract because of the sample shape. Sample is very thin in electron microscopy. We always take very thin sample, and because of this sample is thin, so its reciprocal lattice point is basically very different actually. I'll teach you it later on. It may sound very complex to you, but don't worry. I can tell you right now. So let me see if I have slides. I don't have slides right now, but I'll teach you much later.
Also, sir,
but to answer your question, you will not get diffraction pattern, bright dark fringes if your lattice is not aligned in a way that it is not diffracting. That's the answer. Jyoti?
Okay, I got it, sir. But here only I got another question. Like in XRD, when we use, the sample is reusable, right? The sample does not go in waste. So why is it like, I don't know, just I got this.
Ask this question.
Like we can reuse the XRD sample, no? So it does not go into waste. Why?
What is your question? I did not understand.
This is a question only. Like XRD sample is reusable. Like why? ऐसा क्यों? मतलब.
Okay. That's a question. Because X-rays usually do not damage your sample if it is hard condensed matter material. So X-rays can damage soft material. For example, biological samples, polymers sometimes, but damage is minimal actually. But definitely proteins can be damaged by hard X-rays. So X-ray crystallography samples can be reused because X-rays do not, that is non-destructive. Okay.
Same goes for XPS as well. Same goes for XPS also.
In XPS.
In that one also we use X-ray.
XPS also you can use. Yes.
But there we create the vacuum. Will it affect the sample?
No, vacuum. Suppose your sample is wet. Suppose your sample has lots of solvent. For example, if it is a gel, okay. Suppose you take some. Your sample is like contact lens. Okay, contact lenses has to be wet, right? It has to be in some fluid is there. And suppose you take out the fluid and your sample structure will change. Then your sample may be damaged, but most of the time your chemistry samples like catalysis or samples do not change under vacuum condition. They should not change actually, unless the structure is collapsing and there is a lot of volatile molecules which are there. So XPS is also fine. I mean, XPS you can recover the sample back.
So can you repeat your answer for XRD? I need to write it down.
Madam, it is getting recorded, so don't worry about that. You get the recording, but you can write it down. Yes, because recording is for 1.5 hours. You have to listen to entire recording to get this question answered. So you're right. It's a good habit to write it down. So X-ray diffraction sample is reusable because X-ray diffraction for most of the time is non-destructive technique. So X-rays do not usually damage samples, so it can be reused unless you are working on proteins or stuff like that. Suppose you so it can be reusable. It is reusable, but same is not true always for electron microscopy. Electron microscopy, the sample may undergo a lot of changes because of the high energy which electrons carry. Number one. Number two, electron interaction with the sample is much stronger than the X-ray interactions with the sample. So X-rays do not usually interact. with the sample. So for example, I will tell you one example. So X-rays, suppose they fall on my body, so I will get cancer because I am a soft condensed matter sample, right? I am a soft condensed matter. I have a lot of protein. Okay,
Yes,
it will get denatured. A lot of genetic changes will happen. But if you shine X-rays on a piece of steel, X-rays will not damage piece of steel most of the time, unless you are really bombarding for a long period of time. Okay, does
Yes.
this answer your question? Yeah.
Yes, completely. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Anybody else? But thanks to a lot of students' question, but still I feel that I think we can close this lecture today. And let me take overview of the students who were actively participating into the discussion.